Hello everyone, in this lecture we'll be discussing about HTML form attributes. The chapter describes the different attributes for the HTML form elements. So let us talk about the action attribute first. The action attribute defines the action to be performed when the form is submitted. Usually the form data is sent to a file on a server when the user clicks on the submit button. In the example below, the form data is sent to a file called action underscore page.php. This file contains a server-side script that handles the form data. So this is for handling all the form data that you will receive from the form. So for level 4, we have discussed it in the previous lecture how you have to create the form, and to store all the data it will go it here. Action is equal to action page.php. Now let us talk about the target attribute. The target attribute specifies where to display the response that is received after submitting the form. So the target attribute is blank, self, parent, top, and frame name. So what happens is that if you put blank, so the response is displayed in a new window or tab. If you set the value of target to self, the response is displayed in the current window. If the value is set to underscore parent, the response is delayed in the parent frame. If the value is displayed in underscore top, the response is displayed in the full body of the window. Frame name, the response is displayed in named iframe. So the default value is underscore self. That means that response will open in the current window only. So here's an example. If you set that form action is this and target is blank, so it will open in a new window. Now let us talk about the method attribute. The method attribute specifies the HTTP method to be used when submitting the form data. The form data can be sent as URL variables with method is equal to get, or as HTTP post transaction with method is equal to post. So for the default HTTP method when submitting a form, data is get. When submitting, let us see this. So if we submit, after you submit, notice that the form values is visible in the address bar of the new browser tab. So what will happen if I put submit over here? So see, now what happens is that here is the URL, and here the first name and last name is appearing in the URL, right? So why? Because this was using get method. Here in the form action we mentioned action target, and here we mentioned method is equal to get. So on submitting in the URL, we are getting our data that we have inputted. Now the example uses the post method when you submit the data. So here we have used in the form the attribute method that is post. Now if I submit over here, so what will happen? So after you submit, notice that unlike the get method, the form values is not visible in the address bar, right? Now if you see over here in the URL, you can't see the what data I have submitted. It is only here in this. So when we use get attribute, so what happens is that in the URL you will get all the data that you have fed it to it. But if we use post, so what will happen? In the URL it won't be shown. So there are two methods, get and post. So in get, in the URL your data will be shown. In post, your data will not be shown in the URL. So on notes on gets, appends the form data to the URL in name value pairs. Never use get to send sensitive data. The submitted form data is visible in the URL. The length of the URL is also limited to 2048 characters. So if you have inputted a lot of data, so it won't be able to create a URL, and it will also generate an error. So useful for form submissions where a user want to bookmarks the result. And get is good for non-secure data like query strings in Google. Notes on post appends the form data inside the body of HTTP request. That submitted form data is not shown in the URL. Post has no size limitation and can be used to send large amount of data. Form submissions with post cannot be bookmarked. Right. Now there is autocomplete attribute also. The attribute specifies whether a form should have autocomplete on or off. When autocomplete is on, the browser automatically completes values based on the values that user has entered before. So you might have seen on Google Chrome or Safari that when you feed data, so it automatic on a form, so it automatically tells you that you have written might for example your name, your phone number, your address, so or your email. When you go and type it all over again, when you start typing 2 3 characters, so what happens is that the Google browser will automatically tell you to complete by just clicking on the value that you have entered before, right? So if we have to do autocomplete is equal to on, so what will happen, the browser will suggest me to complete the data on my own, so we can use autocomplete is equal to on. But if we switch it off, then he or she will not be able to autocomplete on its own, then he or she will have to type it. Now talking about the no validate attribute. The no validate attribute is a boolean attribute. So boolean is basically what it tells you about the it tells you that it is true or false. So it indicates that the form input is not to be validated on submit. So the no validate attribute indicates that the form input is not to be validated. So no validate, so enter your email and whatever email I write, so it has all the emails, something like this. So it is not to be, and it will give me a screen like this. So these were all the HTML form attributes. This wasn't important, and in the next section lecture I'll be discussing about HTML form elements, and I'll meet you in the next lecture. Thank you.